Okay, so I'm excited to bring you this presentation. This is a couple of very famous points that I've referenced multiple times to demonstrate the difference between a primary and a secondary pattern and how important they are to reading your opponent, but also in the confidence of knowing when to use them under pressure. So we're going to get into this. So basically, I'm going to use 8-7, 40-15, and 40-30 with Federer serving at the Wimbledon final against Djokovic. And these are huge points. They're crucial in tennis history as we look back on it now. And hopefully after the end of this presentation, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding, not only in how to train and work on your own primary and secondary, also to be able to recognize your opponent's patterns, and then to watch tennis a little bit more educated when you're looking at really important points. But primary patterns basically are your favorites. They're the ones that you're best at and you use when you need the point the most, usually. Secondary patterns are mix-ups. They're surprise plays or locations that you do every now and then, and you typically have more success with these patterns because they have a little bit more shock value and they surprise your opponent. But you can't live on secondary patterns. So 3 target questions to know before you use one of these primary or secondary is, what is the score? Because the score plays a huge role in deciding whether you're going to use a primary and a secondary pattern, which we'll see coming up. What is my favorite? So what am I best at? What am I most comfortable with? And then finally, at a much higher level, what does my opponent think I'm going to do? And the higher level you play, the more your opponent is going to recognize what your favorite patterns, your favorite locations and strategies are, and they're going to look to cover them or counter them. So you need to understand that. So Djokovic's return target, that's the first thing I'm going to go over. And historically, especially with a big point like this, Djokovic is going to target the middle backhand. And that's where that target is on the screen. He does this because it is a huge target in the middle of the court. If he hits the ball a little bit late, a little bit early, he's still going to get it in. If he can get to that target area nice and deep, he's going to catch Federer on his recovery out of the serve, and he's going to be able to make him get a backhand. And as we all know, the serve +1, the serve plus forehand is a lethal weapon in tennis, and he can really make Federer hit a much tougher ball here with the backhand if he can hit that area. So we need to know that that's his target. Also, if the ball is deep, he's going to push Federer behind the baseline, which increases his ability to get a short ball and decreases Federer's ability to get on offense and get inside the baseline after his serve. So we're looking at Djokovic's return target here in a video. This is against Andy Murray, and you'll see this here in the video playback where he targets Murray and he catches him in his recovery out of the serve to the backhand side. And Murray's going backwards. He's hitting a backhand. He doesn't have any angle. And basically, Djokovic is taking Murray's serve and feeding it in and saying, okay, let's just play a ground stroke rally. So he's totally neutralizing the serve. That's why that location is specifically, it's so important on a first serve return. So this is a very famous point. This is US Open 2011 semifinal. This is also a 40-15 match point with Federer serving. And if we remember this, as I'm sure most of us do, Federer chooses his favorite serve. He chooses his primary serve out wide, and Djokovic hits it for a winner. Very famous point. And I'm sure that plays a role in this 2019 Wimbledon final where Federer can remember being in a similar situation. So that does play a role in his memory and probably what he chose to do. So a history of Federer's first serve locations. Historically, and this is a career data here, Federer is probably the most studied player of all time. There's probably more data on Federer than any other player. He likes to hit the deuce court slice serve out wide 52% of the time. So that is a really dominating target for him, as you can see. And on the ad side, it's 45% up the tee. That's a little bit less dominant, but especially on grass where you can work with the slice, you get a lot more value out of your slice. That's definitely what Federer is most comfortable with. So it's really important to know that Djokovic is also very well aware of these tendencies from Federer. This is the 2019 singles final. This is 40-15 in the first serve. And it's interesting because Federer chooses the secondary location, and he chooses his secondary pattern here to go down the tee because he knows that Djokovic on such a huge point will be covering the wide serve. So we're going to have a look at that now. Huge, huge point here. You can see Federer just misses that one. And if you go back and you look at it, you're going to see that Djokovic split steps to the right. He predicts that Federer is going to serve wide. Right here, you can see that in the top of the screen. he split steps to the right. So he's got to basically take a little bit of a gamble here. Federer's serve is basically unreadable, and he has such a good slice serve wide, especially on grass where he can really use his slice to more advantage. And Djokovic takes a split step to the right, and he's just playing a numbers game. So Federer actually makes the right call here. If he's going to go for the ace, he goes to the secondary, he misses it, and it's a huge miss because it would have changed history. So we go to the second serve here, and primary and secondary, they still apply to first and second serves also. And when you're looking at 40-15, Federer still has a match point in hand. He still has the advantage with his second serve. It's still a great second serve. And it's just good to know that his primary target here would be Djokovic's backhand to try and jam him up and not give him a free swing. And what happens here is Federer again chooses a secondary pattern of play. He chooses to go out wide to Djokovic's forehand. So hopefully trying to shock Djokovic. And Djokovic rips to the same target as his first serve target and jams Federer up. Federer tries to get the forehand, but there's no angle there, and he misses. So it's important to recognize that Federer used two secondary patterns, not only on the first serve, but on the second serve. And we go to the next slide here. This is 40-30. Things are getting a little bit tighter here for Federer. And at 40-30, you can predict that he's probably going to want to use a primary because he used secondaries on his last point. And he does choose, indeed, to use a primary pattern, which is his slice serve T. So we know historically that's the one he likes to go for. And Djokovic also predicts this. He split steps to the right, chips the return, and Federer sort of lays up the approach shot to Djokovic's forehand, and he makes a pretty routine pass. Now, a lot of people think Federer choked here, not really hitting that ball with a little less margin. But under the circumstances of a Wimbledon match point, this is still a big pass to make. And it's something that's really impressive from Djokovic to hit that sort of without letting the moment get to him. So, deuce court primary. This is another point from earlier in the match. And you can see this is what might have happened had Federer used his slice serve wide. Even though Djokovic is on it, Federer's really not getting an ace out of this because Djokovic is there. He would have maybe had something a little bit easier to take control of the next ball. But I think that's really interesting to take that into account. And then let's have a look at his ad court primary pattern and see where he would typically go with his second ball. So not necessarily the first one, but the second one. You see there's a slice serve wide. Here's the approach. He goes to the backhand, which is a better option, and he finishes at the net. So that's possibly what could have happened. Federer didn't choose those options, but still amazing from Djokovic to come up with the goods and to recognize Federer's primary and secondary patterns. But hopefully this little presentation can help you to identify that it's very important to work on your own primary patterns and your secondary patterns, but also while you're playing a match to recognize your opponents. And it will really help you to understand strategic dynamics in a match, and especially from the start of a point, which we all know is so important. So thanks for watching my presentation. You can follow me on those social media channels and reach out to me with an email if you like, and see you soon. Thank you.